Here she was, this young woman from Malaysia who had caught the attention of a doctor.
He was a great fantasy teller.
He charmed her by calling her beautiful and sweet.
She started finding out really weird things that didn't make sense.
All of a sudden, she is really talking crazy. There's a cryogenic tube at the end of my street for the reptile aliens when they arrive.
He says, I'm part alien. I'm thinking he's crazy as a bedbug.
She used to always tell me, if I don't show up for work, think the worst.
We were able to locate a ninja sword in the garage.
What the heck happened to her? Was she drugged? Was she hypnotized? What happened?
Intrigue, murder, UFOs. You couldn't make this up if you tried.
He wasn't just a manipulator. He was a person that could charm somebody into doing his bidding.
Girlie was one of the sweetest people you could ever meet. She lit up a room when she walked in. She was always in a good mood, always.
She was very sweet, very kind, poised, and self-assured.
She came to this country to find a better life and to live a happy life.
June 1992, California. 29-year-old Girlie Chu is on a trip of a lifetime to the U.S. Growing up in Malaysia, she has always dreamed of starting a new life here.
She loved life in general. Girlie was a very small young lady, but she had a big personality.
She's also stunning, and during a trip to a San Diego aquarium, she catches the eye of another tourist. His name is Dyson Hasenkopf, and he's warm and extremely outgoing.
He charmed her by calling her beautiful and sweet, and he was a doctor, an American doctor, and that was exciting to her and a wonderful thing. He had done massive research in genetics and other fields of science.
So I think Girlie thought he was a pretty big deal.
Girlie returns to Malaysia, but Dyson continues to charm her from a distance, and she falls in love. When he asks her to move to the U.S. to live with him in New Mexico, she doesn't hesitate to say yes.
I think Girlie knew exactly what she wanted out of life. To have a happy family and for her to continue to grow. He asked her to marry him, and she immediately said yes.
After their wedding, Girlie and Dyson settle into their new life together in Albuquerque, where she gets a job at a bank.
I met her in February of 1997 when I first started being the manager of that banking center. Her loyalty was amazing. She never missed work. Customers absolutely loved her. She thought she was living pretty much a fairy tale life.
Except Dyson always seems to be away.
Girlie was told that I'm a doctor, I'm a physician. Sometimes I'm going to have to be gone for a while. I have conferences to attend. But it's all for the common good because I'm helping save lives.
But soon, it seems as though Dyson's own health is in jeopardy when he is diagnosed with a life-threatening disease.
He would go every single week to do blood transfusions and would be gone for about 24 hours.
Dyson's next-door neighbor, Pedro Tirado Sr., witnesses his battle with cancer.
My dad had told me, yeah, he does have cancer because I've seen him go to the bathroom and cough up blood.
Pedro's heart goes out to Dyson, whom he affectionately calls D.
Dyson was a visitor at the house every day. They played cards and dominoes and spent a good part of the day together. My dad told me that he really liked D, and he considered him as a son.
But Pedro Jr. becomes increasingly wary of the charming neighbor.
Some of the things that he was saying didn't quite add up. My wife is a nurse, didn't feel that he was really a doctor. And he was promising some breakthrough technology, something that sounded quite unlikely, but yet he said it in such a convincing way that you started wondering, wow, is this possible? He could be very compelling when he wanted to convince you of something.
And Pedro Sr. is so convinced by the charismatic Diazin, he invests his hard-earned savings in his project.
Something about being able to change the structure of human beings, the chemistry, somehow from carbon-based to some other form. It was making an amazing amount of money.
Diazin raises more red flags when, after 4 years of marriage, he brings home a surprise for Gurley, who has been yearning for a child.
Gurley had tried lots of different things so that she could conceive a child, and nothing seemed to work. All of a sudden, Diazin came home one night and had a newborn baby that he had adopted.
A little baby boy he calls Dimitri.
Diazin basically hands him over to Gurley and says, this is the child you will raise. I don't know how many questions she asked as to the origins of this child. It seems strange to me.
I thought it was weird, but we were all so happy for her.
She falls in love with this little baby, and she does everything she can to raise this child.
Gurley would take him to the zoo, or they would always go on an outing. It was wonderful because Diazin traveled so much that now she has this baby to take care of.
As time goes on, Diazin travels too much and spends less and less time at home. Gurley becomes suspicious.
Her first red flags were Diazin had an office in the house that was locked, and I believe that Gurley some way started thinking something wasn't right.
One day, Gurley finds his office door open and conducts a search inside. What she finds shocks her.
She found out that his real name was not Diazin Heisenkopf. It was Armando Chavez. And she didn't trust who he really was anymore. I can't even imagine how devastating that must have been for her to find out the man that you're living with and that you trusted is a fraud.
But just how much of a fraud is he? Is he even a doctor? Gurley begins to doubt everything Diazin says. She learns the real reason for his absences from the house is to see other women.
She confronted him later about different women that he was seeing. She was extremely hurt.
At that point, the relationship started going bad.
Extremely bad. Things take a dark turn when she catches Diazin in the act of sabotaging her car. Is he loosening the wheel nuts? She confronts him.
He was kneeling by her tires and had something in his hand, and he got up and he pushed her, and he was choking her. She was able to hit the garage door opener, and she slid out underneath the garage.
Gurley runs over to Pedro Sr.'s house next door.
And then Diazin showed up and said, "Where is she?" And he pushed my father, and my father told him, "You can't come in." So Diazin backed off and he left.
She was afraid for her life that he was going to kill her.
Coming up, Gurley Chu Heisenkopf's American dream becomes even more of a nightmare.
She felt that he was so powerful of a force that he would go to any length to harm her.
October 1998, Albuquerque, New Mexico. Gurley Chu has become convinced that her husband, Diazin, is a potential fraud, and not the brilliant and loving doctor she believed him to be. When she confronts him, he becomes violent.
She came in to work the next day, and she was visibly upset. She said that she was leaving Dyson and that they had got into a physical altercation the night before, and that she was afraid for her life, that he was going to kill her. I was in shock.
Gurley moves out of the Albuquerque home and is forced to make the decision of leaving Dimitri with Diazin.
She alerts her coworkers about the situation. They become very protective of her. They walk her to and from her car. She drives different routes home every day.
Meanwhile, Diazin has been hunting for other female companionship. On a dating website, he finds 50-year-old Julie McGuire, who owns a motel in Aztec, New Mexico, 150 miles away.
He sent me this long email about himself, that he was single, that he had a little boy that was 2 years old.
Emails soon lead to phone calls, and a few weeks later, Julie meets Dr. Diazin Hassenkoft at her motel.
He wasn't super handsome, but he wasn't bad. I believe that he was very attracted to me. He commented how beautiful I was. I thought he was nice to be around, nice to talk to.
Diazin and Julie continue dating, and one day, he invites her to his home in Albuquerque that he had shared with Gurley just a month or two earlier.
He started getting kind of romantic with me. And it ended up, and we had sex that night. He's very different type of man that I've never been with before, that listened to the woman as far as her needs and her wants and her likes.
As Diazin gains Julie's trust, he hits her up with a proposal that is tempting, but comes at a hefty price.
He said, I had a serum out that you're injected and your skin's gonna change back to the way it was when you were younger. And he says, well, the first injection will be the most, and that's $3,200.
Julie allows Diazin to take her blood as part of the process. But things get strange when he tells her he is much older than he looks.
And he said, if you add it up, I'm many, many, many years old. I says, 100? And he says, no, more than that.
The reason why is even stranger.
He says, I'm part alien. I'm thinking he's crazy as a bedbug.
Now feeling leery of Diazin, Julie asks a friend of hers in the police department to run a background check on the single doctor.
My friend called me back and told me that he was not divorced, that he was married. I just was very angry. I confronted Diazin right away. Why did you have to lie about it? And he said, because I didn't think that you would want to see me if you knew I was still married. And he said, she is fighting me on the divorce. She wants more money and more money.
In reality, it is Diazin who is insisting Gurley Chu walk away without a dime. He has an obsessive need for control and is enraged that she is defying him.
He's a very abusive, domestic violence individual. He feels that women are subservient and should answer to him.
Unaware that Diazin might be violent, Julie becomes alarmed when he makes threatening statements regarding Gurley.
He told me that a friend of his had some people that would take her away. And I says, what are you trying to tell me? Are they going to kill her? I didn't know. Should I take them literally?
Girlie does take him literally. She is now living in mortal fear for her life and for Dimitri's welfare.
She wanted to have this child and get him away from Dyson. Instead, he chose to put Dimitri up for adoption. In the process of the adoption of Dimitri, the adoption worker starts getting threatening calls from Dyson that frighten her. She contacts the FBI.
The FBI agent promises to look into the situation, but on September 10th, 1999, things take a disturbing turn.
About 7:45, I got to work, and Girlie wasn't there. She never missed work, and I thought it was odd, so I tried to call Girlie. There was no answer, so I hung up, and I called the police right away to let them know that she was missing.
She always warned us if she didn't show up for work that something bad had happened to her.
I knew immediately what was happening, that she was either murdered or being murdered, and that we were never going to find her.
September 10th, 1999, Albuquerque, New Mexico. 36-year-old bank teller Girlie Chu Hasenkopf, who is in the midst of a bitter divorce, fails to show up for work one morning. Her boss, Kathy Freeman, calls police.
I tried to explain to them best I could, without sounding too crazy, that she's missing and that they need to get to her apartment.
Police arrive and the property manager gives them access to Girlie's suite for a welfare check.
They feel that something is drastically wrong. They sealed off the apartment and immediately went forward with a search warrant.
Detectives are dispatched to the home of Girlie's estranged husband, Dyson Hasenkopf.
The house that Girlie once lived in with Dyson is now completely vacant.
There was an all-points bulletin put out for Dyson Hasenkopf, since at this point it appeared as if he may have been on the run.
Later that afternoon, there's a disturbing discovery.
A road worker had discovered some bloody items along a highway in Magdalena, New Mexico.
Bloody clothing and a tarp, some duct tape with long strands of dark hair are found on the side of a pretty desolate highway. It would be a good spot to lose a body in.
The clothing is sent to the lab along with the tarp and hair. Meanwhile, a police forensics team processes Girlie's apartment.
There appears to have been a large amount of blood that was later wiped up with bleach, but it doesn't get all the blood. There's also cat hair found in the apartment. Girlie did not have a cat, neither did the people that lived in the apartment before her.
All were signs that there may have been a murder scene.
Detectives interview neighbors and friends of Girlie and Dyson's, looking for leads, and discover the odd story behind Dimitri's origins.
Up in Canada, Dyson had a woman of Japanese descent that he had been having a relationship with. She gave birth to this child, and Dyson convinced her to relinquish the child.
After Girlie left, he filled out a form to give Dimitri up for adoption. This is where police find a promising lead.
Dyson Hasenkopf gave an emergency contact of Linda Henning, and that was just one way that we were able to become involved with that particular individual.
Linda Henning is a local fashion designer. She'd been a successful businesswoman up until meeting Diazen Hossenkoft at a UFO conference, about 6 weeks before Gurley went missing.
There was a speech given by one of those guys that believes in extraterrestrial, shape-shifting lizard people, and Diazen happens to be there. And they meet each other.
And all of a sudden, she is really talking crazy. There's a cryogenic tube at the end of my street. There are markers there for the reptile aliens when they arrive. And this Diazen Hossenkoft that she met, she thought this was one of the smartest people that she'd ever met.
Diazen tells Linda, you have been chosen as the one who can save everybody from the evil alien queen who was Gurley, which is preposterous right there.
Stephen Trusnovec is a private investigator who is hired by a concerned friend of Linda's.
What the heck happened to her in those 2 weeks? How did she go from a sane, hard-working person to a whack job?
She became disheveled. She became erratic. She became not the person that she was.
Was she drugged? Was she hypnotized? What happened?
Trusnovec digs into Diazen's dubious history.
I had checked the colleges and universities Hossenkoft had stated that he'd attended and graduated from. He attended one of the colleges for maybe 6 months.
His history, his education, and his status, almost none of it was true. Almost none of it.
This guy was a complete fraud.
Diazen has charmed Linda so completely, she cut all ties with concerned friends who dared to question Diazen's legitimacy.
And before you know it, now you have Gurley Chu missing. The police are coming around, and then Linda's being questioned.
On September 12, 1999, Linda tells police in an interview that her relationship with Diazen is strictly professional.
Linda Henning described Diazen Hossenkoff as having cancer, that she was simply a caretaker, that she was there just to care for his needs. At the beginning stages of the investigation, Linda Henning we thought was a victim, somebody that was manipulated by Diazen Hossenkoff.
But police soon question, is Linda actually a victim? Or is she involved with the murder?
She lied to investigators, trying to get the detectives to go down a different trail than the truthful trail.
She's now being looked at as a possible accomplice.
Meanwhile, 150 miles away in Aztec, the new woman Hossenkoft is dating, Julie McGuire, receives a call from a homicide detective.
They said that Gurley is missing. Diazen is missing. Would you have any idea where he was? I'm shocked. My head, it was just spinning.
Coming up, Julie wonders whether she will be next.
I felt scared. Is he going to harm me?
He had the power of violence, and he had the power to manipulate people and do his bidding, so she had good reason to fear for her life.
September 1999, Albuquerque, New Mexico. Despite some red flags, Julie McGuire had been dating Diazen Hossenkoft, the prime suspect in the murder of his missing wife. She had witnessed incriminating threats Diazen made against Gurley and fears he might want to eliminate her too.
The Aztec Police Department said that they were to watch over me until they found him. I was scared.
Investigators are also realizing just how big a fraud Diazon is, and how much he preys upon his trusting victims who have been investing in his scams.
Diazon Hosenkoff definitely wasn't a doctor. He embellished upon everything.
Depending on which woman it was either a cure for their cancer or a curative for growing old.
When police interview Diazon's neighbors, they discover he was acting suspiciously on the evening his estranged wife, Girlie Chu, went missing.
Neighbors say they remember seeing Diazon drive up in a brown Honda with black stuff on his face, looking very frantic and sweaty, and he runs in and he runs out and he's gone, and they never see him again.
The way he was dressed appeared very strange to one of the neighbors and was very concerning.
Diazon has fled, but police are zoning in on Linda Henning, who has raised their suspicions by lying in her interview. And she owns a brown car like the one witnesses saw on the night of Girlie's disappearance.
After she gives that initial interview, she starts becoming very uncooperative with police, which of course raises suspicions. She didn't go back home.
She jumped from hotel to hotel. She actually took extraordinary steps by putting detectives off with different cars.
That's when they start realizing that Linda is a lot more than just this innocent victim.
Then, 2 weeks later, on September 22nd, there's a big break in the case. Police finally catch up with the main suspect himself, Diazon Hosenkoff, and execute an arrest warrant.
With the assistance of the FBI, we were able to track him down, and he was taken into custody in South Carolina.
After they caught him, that's when I kind of settled down. I just felt as though I was safe.
While Hosenkoff is transported back to New Mexico, his son Dimitri is placed in care, and a grand jury is convened.
Contrary to her original statements of being just a caretaker to Diazon Hosenkoff, during the grand jury testimony, Linda Henning divulged that she in fact did have a relationship with Hosenkoff. She had spent the night together with him the night that Girlie Chu went missing.
Investigators execute a search warrant on Linda's home and car. They make a surprising find.
We were able to locate a ninja sword in the garage of Linda Henning.
They find receipts that just that day that Girlie went missing, Diazon had purchased that sword.
Could the sword be the actual murder weapon?
There is a spot of blood on that sword.
Detectives send the blood to the lab to be processed. They also find the possible source for other evidence that had been found at Girlie's apartment.
Linda was very much a cat person, and there were cat hairs found in Girlie's apartment.
And Girlie didn't own a cat. After investigators talk with Girlie's co-workers, they are able to prove Linda lied under oath to the grand jury.
Linda Henning said that she did not know Girlie Chu Hosenkoff, and that simply was a lie.
Linda made some deposits at the same branch that Girlie Chu worked at.
Linda Henning had been in the banking center, and Girlie had waited on her.
Linda is subsequently arrested and charged with perjury. With Henning and Hosenkoff both in custody, police still continue the search for Girlie Chu, who's now been missing for 6 weeks.
We searched extensively, utilizing search and rescue, canine, cadaver dogs, helicopters. The detectives were inundated with calls from psychics, from people in the UFO community, and all of it came up negative.
We just kept waiting for word. It felt horrible. I'm sorry.
Coming up, can the police prove a murder happened without a body?
This, at best, is extremely difficult.
When you don't have a body, you don't know for sure how the person died.
And can a killer be believed?
She knew she was going to be hunted like the dog she was. And yes, she was like a scared rabbit in an open field. She knew.
October 1999, Albuquerque, New Mexico. Police continue the search for Gurley Chu, who has been missing for 6 weeks. Her estranged husband, Dyson Hosenkoft, is the prime suspect in her disappearance.
We all knew. We all knew what had happened. And that they would never find her.
In this case, we had no body, so we go with what pieces of the puzzle we have.
One of the pieces is the evidence found at the side of a highway shortly after Gurley went missing.
What we discovered is it was in fact Gurley Chu Hosenkoff's blood stains that were located on the tarp and clothing.
On Gurley's blouse, there was some other bodily fluid, possibly saliva, that may have been Dyson Hosenkoff's.
Blood on the ninja sword found in Linda Henning's home is inconclusive. But investigators get a big break when they test the blood found inside Gurley's own apartment.
Not only was Gurley Chu Hosenkoff's blood determined to be at her residence, but also Linda Henning's DNA from her blood. Not only does it put Linda at the apartment, but shows she may have had a struggle of some type involving Gurley Chu Hosenkoff.
Things are rapidly going downhill for Linda.
At a grand jury hearing in November, prosecutors speculate that it was Linda who gained access to Gurley's apartment.
What the belief is, Linda is the one that's used to make Gurley feel comfortable enough to open her door, because Linda had met Gurley at the bank.
Dyson and Linda Henning entered into her house and assaulted her. It was evident that she was wrapped up in a tarp and transported a distance from Albuquerque.
Both Dyson and Linda are indicted for murder by the grand jury.
It was a shock. No one really thought he could do something like this.
And no one is more shocked than Julie McGuire, who'd been dating Hosenkoff at the time of Gurley's murder.
I almost felt sick to my stomach. There's no way in heck I'm ever dating again. No way I'm getting on one of those dating sites, and I never have and never will again.
In January 2002, rather than face a lengthy trial and possible death sentence, Dyson Hosenkoff takes a plea deal and is sentenced to life plus 61 years in prison.
Hosenkoff pled guilty to the homicide of Gurley and agreed to provide information as to how the crime occurred and where the body was.
For Gurley's family and friends, Hosenkoff's plea deal offers some justice, but little consolation.
I miss her. There's so many people that miss her. And I'm just sorry that she had to even go through any of this.
Linda Henning refuses a plea deal, maintaining she is a victim and not a killer. Now her case is heading towards trial, and it is her life that is on the line.
Well, it was the death penalty. You know, she would have been the second woman in New Mexico history to be executed.
Now, I have been painted as the biggest monster, the most dangerous criminal in New Mexico history. I will only say that everybody's in for a real big surprise.
In September 2002, Linda Henning's trial begins, And in New Mexico, it's the trial of the century.
We have intrigue, we have murder, we have UFOs, we have conspiracy theories. You couldn't make this up if you tried.
But for prosecutors, proving Henning's guilt will be an uphill battle. They only have circumstantial evidence to go on.
This, at best, is extremely difficult. You have no body.
So when you don't have a body, you don't know for sure how the person died.
The prosecution argues that the reason Hasenkopf wanted Gurley Chew dead was to avoid a costly divorce. He brainwashed Linda Henning into believing Gurley was an evil alien queen that needed to be vanquished by her.
She said that she had been appointed a queen of the world and that her responsibilities was to save the world from other queens coming from other planets.
Linda believes that she is part of this larger intergalactic story. Linda must be the one that kills Gurley. And that's why the ninja sword that's purchased that day becomes significant, because he has mentioned that this is how it will end, with a sword.
And did she say with what she would be fighting these other queens?
With a sword.
It was all so bizarre.
I think Hasenkopf, that for him, this was a power move in the sense that he got somebody else to do his dirty work. I think it made him feel smart that he got somebody else to do this for him.
This is one of the most frightening things. This is the power that Diazin Hasenkopf had over people. He wasn't just a manipulator. He was a person that could charm somebody into to doing his bidding.
I've never met anybody like him before, and I really hope I don't.
As investigators and witnesses are called to give evidence, Linda herself doesn't seem concerned at the outcome.
While testimony's going on, she was doing drawings of aliens, just making it look more like a loon. This didn't help.
But the trial is about to take an even more bizarre turn when the defense calls Hasenkopf himself as a witness.
You gotta be kidding me. The prosecutor brought Hasenkopf before a grand jury initially. He scared the hell out of that grand jury so bad that they didn't believe a word he said. And now you're gonna bring Hasenkopf in as Linda's defense? How the hell could he do that?
October 2002, New Mexico. Former fashion designer Linda Henning is staring down the barrel of a life sentence for her part in the murder of Gurley Chew Hasenkopf. But it's a circumstantial case.
You have no body. You have so many different pieces of weaponry and armament that were located, but you have no idea if they were or were not used in the crime.
The violence was masterminded by Gurley's estranged husband, Diazin Hasenkopf, who has already pled guilty to her murder. He was enraged that Gurley had the nerve to defy him by wanting a divorce, which would have cost him dearly.
Diazin Hasenkopf is so evil, so monstrous, that he cares nothing about those around him, and he'll take extraordinary steps to achieve in his warped mind what it is he wants in life.
In the case of Linda Henning, Hasenkopf had the ability to seemingly brainwash her.
The truth of the matter is, he was the purest of evil and dangerous because he was capable of making people do things they would not normally do, and do it on his behalf.
And now at her trial, in a strange twist, Diazin has been called by Linda Henning's defense to testify. He is a strange sight for the jury to see.
The jury hear about this crazy Diazin Hasenkopf, and then when he finally walks in, He's this little tiny guy with long hair and could probably put your hands around his waist. That's the guy?
He was a totally different person. He had let his hair grow. His fingernails were really long and pointy. He was scary.
She knew she was going to be hunted like the dog she was. And yes, she knew, like a scared rabbit in an open field, she knew.
Diazin's chilling testimony also calls into question the highly incriminating blood evidence that places Linda Henning inside Gurley's apartment at the murder scene. He claims that he planted it.
Yes.
Dizon Hasenkopf says it was his sinister idea to fool law enforcement authorities. What he says is that he had a vial of blood with him, Linda's blood, and sprinkles it in Gurley's apartment. You can imagine jurors didn't buy any of that.
I thought the son of a gun had my blood in there too. He could have grabbed mine. He had 2 vials of my blood.
After almost 3 weeks of testimony, the jury retires to consider its verdict. But will they find Linda guilty of murder or a victim of brainwashing? The jury does not take long to make their decision. Guilty on all charges.
I don't think Linda Henning was an innocent party in this at all, because I think she participated. But I think that Dizon, he did something. I don't know if you call it brainwashed. That's the only way I can explain it.
The jury also considers Linda's potential sentence. The death penalty is on the table.
Mercifully, maybe mercifully, that was taken off the table. Instead, she's still received a death sentence. It's just a woman's prison, for the rest of her life.
Henning is transferred to her new home, a prison in New Mexico. Meanwhile, it is no surprise that the man who masterminded Gurley's murder reneges on his plea deal by never revealing the location of her body. This is a tragedy for Gurley Chu's Malaysian family.
In the Malaysian culture, one must have the body or the spirit wanders the earth. And so without the body, they were never able to give her a proper burial. And that is a really painful thing, as you can imagine.
For Hasenkopf, it's the ultimate power and control and not giving it up. He has the last laugh, so to speak.
But the last laugh is on Hasenkopf. Behind bars, he will never be able to charm, manipulate, and murder another innocent victim again.
He is a murderer, a kidnapper, a fraud, a liar. I don't think there's anything good about that man.
Linda fell for it. I fell for it. God knows how many other women did. I've told this to many women. Be careful. Don't trust everything that's being told to you.